glass ceiling. And Penelope Pink, now you're my reward.
You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
The World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion of the world.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition. This is the Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling with your host, Mr. Green. And we are going through another recap of this week's, or this particular episode's, episode 48 it is. And it is listed as The Last Stand. So I guess we'll figure out what this is. I'm assuming The Last Stand in this regard was meant to be a statement on Princess Aussie and her main event / championship aspirations, and this allegedly is her last chance to get it. They haven't really built that up, so I don't know how accurate that title is, but you know, we'll go with it and move on. So this is the review, this is the recap, and I'm just gonna say up front that this is, you know, a solid C. The episode it was pretty basic. I mean, didn't really get much out of it personally. Maybe you did, but I just didn't feel it here. I just didn't get it because it didn't have a lot of build towards anything. The matches are fine. The persons that were on the show were fine. And some of it I enjoyed, but when I look back at the episode and I look at what they assumably tried to accomplish, when I weigh those things into it, then it turns into this is a fairly average show. You know, this is at best. One thing I have to bring up before we go into the actual review is I just found out, and I don't know why, WOW doesn't seem to advertise these things. So if somebody saw this on TV and I didn't, please bring it up or leave it in the notes or something, because I am now getting under the impression that WOW has no ability or desire to advertise their own stuff. And what is it that I'm talking about? WOW now airs on Vice. I did not notice. I happened to walk into the break room at my job at the TV station, and I was flipping around on the channels. I pulled up the guide and I said, "Wow, why is WOW on? This is a Wednesday," and it was on Vice. And I flipped to it, and lo and behold, it was the episode that had just passed that Saturday, and it was on Vice TV. And I was like, okay, well, now they've gone beyond syndication. Now they actually have a cable outlet, albeit a small cable outlet. It's probably the equivalent of where they were before with Access TV. But they're on Vice, and I had no idea that they were doing this. I didn't see any press release on it, and I didn't see them advertise it. I'm honestly a little bit shocked. I mean, I can understand when you have a show and you're syndicating it out to a bunch of different places that you can't dedicate time on your program to every station and everything. But this is a cable network, and it might be more convenient for some people. It's like, hey, you know, just so you know, WOW is now on Vice, you know, Wednesday nights at 12, which is, you know, this is late night TV. I mean, it is really late night TV, and I don't know if this is the right time slot for WOW. Quite honestly, they air apparently twice on Vice. Didn't mean to rhyme it there, but apparently they air twice on that network. And it is from what I'm reading, I only caught the one episode on Vice, and that was a midnight showing. So it runs at midnight on Vice, and it runs again 3 hours later at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I know that, we're not gonna judge their ratings off of that 3 a.m. airing. But I will judge it off of the 12 o'clock airing and what they do on their syndicated package. Unfortunately, in the last 3 weeks or so, I have not seen an update on their syndicated programming since the 6th of August, which is the week before what I'm covering right now. So just to give an idea of the ratings, because I wanted to get back into talking about the ratings and doing the full review, so I can provide a full picture of what's going on with WoW from the television aspect. The highest rating that I've seen on WoW, and I think that this is according to WrestleNomics. I want to give credit to this. This is according to WrestleNomics. They do a fantastic job of creating this huge spreadsheet, and they cover everything. They got ratings from New Japan, WWE, Rampage. They even got Heels, which isn't a wrestling show necessarily, but it's it's a wrestling program, a wrestling based program. They got Dark Side of the Ring, so they cover a lot within this. I mean, almost everything from top to, if it airs on broadcast TV, cable or over the air broadcast, they seem to cover it. They do not cover it, and I only say that in case anybody is like, well, you can see the NWA. No, the NWA doesn't qualify because they only show it on YouTube. And so since they have YouTube analytics, that's a little bit different. Well, it's a lot different than what you get off of a rating sheet. But in any case, getting back to the point, the last week, which is the last week, the 6th, which was that Sunday, I guess the day that I watched it would be on the 5th. But the highest rating that I saw for that particular episode would be a 0.08. 0.08. Now, if I remember correctly, that's probably going to be somewhere in the nature of about maybe 280,000 people watching the show. I mean, they've averaged anywhere between 300,000 to about 250,000, 250,000. Something that one I know is a little less than that. I think they dropped down to about, I want to say 160, about 160,000 people watching the show. For them, that's probably pretty good. I mean, WoW has given the impression they've been on for a year and they've been renewed. Okay, so I think that we cannot overlook the idea that they have been renewed. Somebody looked at the numbers, they've looked at what they were doing, they looked at the progress of the show, and they said, it's fine, let's keep going. So that harks back to what I was talking about when I brought up ratings weeks ago. I said that the rating wasn't great, but it being good or bad is going to rest solely within the internal discussions of the people at WoW, because we don't know how much it costs for them to produce this show. We don't know what the TV stations in those particular time slots are looking for as far as their ratings are concerned. I mean, it's a lot of little different things that they would use to determine whether this is a success or not. For WoW, it probably is. Quite honestly, it within the range of what they're doing is probably a successful rating to say that we're at 0.08. Now, that's not necessarily a strong rating in the grand scheme of things, but it's not a terrible rating for them within a syndicated television universe with a show that you have no idea where it's going from one market to the next. What I did discover, and I think I brought this up, but I'll bring it up again. When I went to Chicago, when I was in Chicago, this was the episode that was airing. And I found that it airs in the afternoons there, which was entirely different than what I was, thinking about. But because every other show, every station that I looked at when they sent these papers out, when they were giving the press releases, every station that I saw listed this at 10, 11, sometimes 1. Some of them is just a fluid thing. It just bounces back and forth depending on what they're doing in their primetime lineup and what have you. But overall, it seemed to be a very late night show. Well, in the greater Chicago area, that's apparently not the case. It came on at 5 in the afternoon. And I was like, well, you know what? This makes more sense for what WOW is. WOW does not strike me anytime I watch it. And I've watched every episode since they come back. But it doesn't strike me as a show that is attempting to try to get that 18 to 49 demographic. It just does not seem to do that. They are really, they're not incoherent, but they don't do a lot of build to anything. They can drop stuff at the drop of a hat. Every wrestling promotion I've ever seen has been able to do that, but they do it a lot. They don't really seem to go out of their way to try to get more people to watch. Now, you could consider that a good or a bad thing, because they're your AEWs. We'll use them as an example. Having Shaq show up. Having Mike Tyson show up. Things like Rosario Dawson. Generally, when wrestling programs do things like that, they're trying to get more people to watch. They're trying to get more attention on their product. They're trying to get more people interested in their product. And by having somebody like a Rosario Dawson, like a Shaquille O'Neal, like a Mike Tyson pop in, you're hoping that their fan base will flood on it, at least watch out of just sheer curiosity. If you get a sports star like a Shaquille O'Neal, you're hoping that this thing runs on the ESPN, the clips, like, oh man, Shaq just got put through, stuff like that. WOW has not given the impression that they are concerned with that in the least. Not at all. They've had their opportunity. They had somebody right there in their roster that they could have tried to, for lack of a better term, exploit. That being AJ Mendez, they never did, and that's something I'll get into. I may have to dedicate an entire show to that. But that shows me when I see him in the afternoon, I was like, okay, this fits the narrative that WOW has kind of painted for themselves, whether they intended to do it or not. So those ratings would make sense in there. And I was pretty close. A 0.08 rating is about 220,000 viewers. So it's just a little bit under, that 250,000 mark. That is them on syndicated television across the country in different time slots. Again, that might be a number that they're perfectly happy with. They might be, absolutely fine with that. Hey, and more power to them. Their ratings on Vice, however, are, they are just drastically low. I mean, you have to again take into account that Vice is a very offshoot network. And for all intents and purposes, it's a very young network. There's no comparison of a Vice against a USA network or a Vice against a TNT. There's no comparison there. It doesn't have the reach as either one of those companies. It's not on a basic cable platform like those companies, networks, however you want to describe it. So you cannot expect for Vice to get the same numbers / viewership that is compatriots or rival networks, however you want to describe it. Can't expect them to get that. But these are just abysmal numbers. Maybe it's because it just started up. Maybe it's because WOW doesn't advertise it. Maybe nobody knows it's there. But these are just abysmal numbers. The lowest number that I see for Vice, and I'm not going to go into the 3 a.m. broadcast, but the lowest number I see for Vice at this point is a 0.00. I mean, that doesn't necessarily say that nobody watched, but it is, you're probably somewhere under, because a 0.01 is like 60,000 people. So you're way underneath 60,000 people across the country. Think about that. The country's a big place. You have millions upon millions of people, and nobody saw this. Most people probably didn't even know it was there. But yeah, these are abysmal numbers. The highest that they got is a 0.02, and that is males 18 to 49. That was for the 12 o'clock broadcast on Vice. Again, we're figuring that's probably 120 or less, 120,000 or less. Maybe they'll start advertising and maybe the numbers will go up. This seems to be relatively new, but I felt like I needed to bring this up because WOW apparently is not. And as I'm going up the spreadsheet of WOW, I'm sorry, not WOW, but as I'm going up the wrestling spreadsheet for viewership and ratings and things like that, it looks like this has been on Vice for at least 3 or 4 months. I didn't even pay attention. I just thought I'd scroll up as I'm talking. But they've been on Vice unadvertised, as far as I can tell, at least since April. The earliest ratings that they have for them on Vice is April 18th of this year. April 18th, 2023 is the earliest I've seen for them on Vice TV, as listed by the WrestleNomics spreadsheet. Now, maybe they missed one. Maybe they missed a couple of weeks. I don't know. But even if this was off by a couple of weeks, it is insanely ridiculous that they haven't brought up that they air on Vice once that I've seen. Again, if you heard something different, if you got an email, something different, if you saw anybody on WOW television or somebody off WOW television talking about WOW, saying that, yeah, we got a new show on Vice TV, or we re-air on Vice. If you've seen any of that, leave it in the comments. Let me know. Because I really want to know, am I just blind? Did I not see this? Was I not paying attention? All the way back to April. And it's like this doesn't exist. So anyway, that's enough of that. I felt like I needed to get into some of the ratings just to provide a little something extra to the conversation as we talk about WOW. But speaking of WOW, let's get into the program in and of itself. So we have The Last Stand, episode 48. And as I said before, WOW has a standard. They have a template that they like to use. And you might get them to change out of that here and there. It's possible. It doesn't happen very often. But they do have that. The template is there. It exists. And that usually goes as follows. They open it up with the recap of the main event for the last match. And the main event of the last match, as it is on this episode, was they're recapping Last Call, which they rarely call them that. But Reina Del Rey and Wrecking Ball taking on the Tonga Twins, which was a boring main event. And how that set them up for challenging for the Wild Tag Team Championships. So that is covered, and then they set up for Princess Aussie's main event match. And that's usually how it goes. They do a recap, and then they do the match, and then they have a video package, then they do a match, and then they have a video package, then they do a match. You get the idea. So that's the overall template that we deal with when we're watching WoW and looking at their television. Here they do the same number. And I want to give some credit to those editors, because even though I felt like the match was boring, and I mean the main event from the previous week, the Tonga Twins versus the Wrecking Ball and Reina Del Rey, the editors did at least make it look comparable. And it made it look like, okay, well, they won, yay! So now we can move into this next match. The editors probably should get a raise on this show, because they do more to try and make these matches mean something than the wrestlers themselves. Now, I'm not saying that the wrestlers don't want to do that, but they don't get the chance to really, like, week by week, talk the match up, say what this means, things like they just do not get the chance to do it. And so it becomes reliant on whatever backstage vignette they may have, or the editors that piece this together, or the commentators, which they really shouldn't be doing all the time, but the commentators having to fill in the blanks of whatever situation took place off camera that we'll never see. So, yeah, shout out to those editors that put this together and tried to make some level of sense behind what goes on in a WoW show. So, yeah, you got that opening video, the recap, and then the preview. And then we go into the opening match, which is Chainsaw and with her little sister, Angelica Dante, and then versus Chantilly Chella. This was a David and Goliath match. You got the giant, in their universe, Chainsaw. And you got tiny Chantilly Chella. I am never going to like that name. I just am never going to like that name. It's nothing against her, but that name is just so stupid. Why are you named after a music festival? Anyhow, I mean, what are you there, partying all the time? Jesus. All right, so anyhow, we get into this match, and you got Chainsaw coming out. I still, I like the apron that she got. I like the repackaging of Chainsaw, quite honestly. I was worried about it at first, but I do like the packaging that they have with her and Dante back together. I like when Dante is doing her manager thing and she's giving instructions through poking at the faces on the apron, which is a disturbing apron. But to have these faces that's just kind of, sewn onto it, and yeah, we know it's not real, but I'm just saying, just the concept of that is a disturbing apron that she comes out with. I can only repeat what I've said about Chainsaw before. She is not a great wrestler. But in fairness to her, because she is the monster here, because she's supposed to be the quote uncontrollable force, her not being good or polished or smooth works in her favor. She can be rough. She can be unpolished. She can be just a brute in there. And it works for her because that's what she's supposed to be. She can. It's almost like what Bobby Heenan described about himself. It's like it didn't matter what he did. Is that if I did it right, then Bobby Heenan, the brain, is fine. If I screw up and I trip or fall or twist over my words or something like that, it's also fine because everybody knew that Bobby was not the genius that he proclaimed himself to be. He said it worked because it was the easiest job in the world for me. He said because whether I succeeded or failed at whatever it is he was attempting to do, it worked. And that's what I feel about Chainsaw. Like whether she does it smooth or not, it works. And this is the point where I want to give some praise to Chella also. She probably should get an MVP award from WoW at some point. I don't know if they ever do these things backstage or give a bonus in the check or something like that. But, I am going to publicly say that, y'all need to do something for her. WoW's management, Dave McClain, Jeannie Buss, whoever. She deserves praise / award or a trophy or something like that. She has been in the ring with everybody, practically, that WoW has on their roster. From the inexperienced to the veterans of the indies. One thing that I would say that if I was the management, I would trust her with almost anybody that I had on that roster. She being Chantilly, seems to be capable of getting a lot out of the girls that are there, even the ones like Chainsaw, like G.I. Jane, who are not as polished or experienced as she is or some of the other girls on the roster. You go back and look at that match with Chella and G.I. Jane, you can see her having to slow Jane down. Like, all right, no, we're going to do this. You can literally see her doing that. And this match, no, I don't want to say that you could see her firing off instructions, but she did a lot to help the mythos of Chainsaw, even though she put up a good fight. This is probably the best match that Chainsaw has had overall. It's not, it's not her longest or, not the most impressive in that regard. It probably was the most impressive by way of having somebody smaller do a lot in the match. Chantilly Chella did a lot in the match. She did the old, I got to move faster, I got to out quicker, got to out thicker, things like that, coming off the top rope, hitting it with a drop kick, and, just giving the viewing audience and the crowd the hope that she could pull this off. And that's about as much as you can ask out of her in this situation, is that she had to get a reasonable, engaging match out of Chainsaw. And for the time that they had and for who she was with, I thought that she accomplished that. She lost, but that seems to be the role that she has taken on in WoW, is that a lot of times Chantilly Chella goes in there to give the good match, but then she loses. And I've said it earlier, somebody's got to do it. So there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that you're the person that had to take the fall. Somebody has to. But by way of her taking that fall, she gives a lot to her opposition. And she does as much that I think that she could do to shine them up, make them look good, as well as they could be. And I go back to saying that, she probably deserves some praise or a plaque, trophy, something. Throw an extra $300 in the check or whatever. But she deserves something. Ultimately, Chainsaw wins. She essentially gets to a point where she can overpower her, sends her into the ropes, catches her with the double goozle, puts her down with a double choke slam, then comes down on her with the splash. 1, 2, 3. But this was not out, not until she had to fight for it. This is one of the few times that Chainsaw had to fight for it. So we get out of that. And I want to say that when I watched this, I did not watch this airing on television. So there's segments in here that I skipped over because I was watching on the repeat of the uploads on YouTube. So we are mostly just matches here, opposed to whatever segments and bits and skits that they had in between. So the next match is GiGi Gianni taking on Tiki Chamorro. And again, we got the commentators talking about events that are unseen on TV. I understand, having done commentary, that sometimes that's just a necessity. Sometimes you have to do that. You have to explain it to the audience. You have to say, okay, this is what's going on. This is why this is happening, and so on and so forth. So I get it. I do. I get the necessity that the commentators have to explain stuff at some point. My issue with the commentators explaining these things is that it happens all the time. And sometimes it happens for things that either, well, all of them should have been seen, but either could have been seen if it had been planned out better. This is another one of those situations where something went on and they're having to try to explain it. That being why GiGi Gianni is in singles competition opposed to the tag team competition that she had been in when she lost her first partner, Adriana Gambino, who apparently is returning. So we'll see if she gets thrown back into a tag team following this. And then we had the former Commander Spars, who became Amber Rodriguez, and now she's not there. And they're having to explain it again. This is a case of why wrestlers have no voice. I don't understand why they couldn't take some time at the beginning of the day before the tapings of the matches went down and just say, GiGi, I need you to come back here. Give me 2 minutes on you losing your partner. I don't understand how that is such an impossibility. How difficult is that? If they have some reason why they can't, then they should just go ahead and say, well, we can't do it because of this or that. But I really find that very, very, very hard to believe that you cannot carve out 5 minutes in the course of your day of taping over a 3-day weekend to have her just get in front of the camera and say these things, or have somebody interview her and say, well, you lost your partner. What's that going to mean for you? Something. You don't need to have the commentators do that all the time. This is what takes away from that show, is that things just happen. And it's not that it just happens. We understand that those things take place in the course of a wrestling program. But why aren't the wrestlers addressing this? It is always up to Stephen Dickey and David McLean to say something about it. Always. And it has to be some half, cocked reason as to why. Oh, yeah, they just decided that the WoW was too much for them and they left. It'd be as simple as that. So, and this won't be the last time that I have this complaint, folks. I can promise you that, because WoW was already proven that they just, we got to just talk it up, and that's fine. So anyway, GiGi works fine as a heel, and Tiki's a good babyface. She does well in an underdog position, although I don't believe that she came off like an underdog in this particular scenario, because GiGi Gianni and Tiki Chamorro are roughly the same size. There's no underdog feel or vibe here beyond the fact that Tiki just kind of plays into being the the sweetheart baby face more often than not. The match was fine. Nothing behind it. This is the hallmark of what we've been talking about with WoW for a couple of weeks now. The first 3 matches, seemingly more often than not, are cold matches, and this one's no exception. It's a cold match. The match, fine, but there's nothing behind it. There is a point in this match that Gianni did something that made absolutely zero sense. And I don't know if somebody should have asked her what was this supposed to be when she got in the back. But there is a point where Chamorro has Gianni in a submission hold. Not quite a surfboard, but for the sake of this, we'll call it that. Where Gianni's on her stomach. Chamorro is sitting down like just a little bit by Gianni's thighs, and she has her arms hooked by the wrist. Well, at this point, Gianni gets her arms free, and then what was supposed to be here is that she takes her nails and she drags it down Chamorro's legs, which would have been a fine heel spot that she would do something like this. But the entirety of that rake across her legs happened on knee pads and boots. So I'm not sure why Chamorro was selling the idea that this hurt. I mean, she put on the face like, oh my God, this is such pain. I was like, what? How is this painful? She's raking your knee pads and your boots. And this is another one of those points of like, come on, seriously? This is where you're supposed to have somebody of some sense or veteran status look at that and say, okay, what did you do wrong here? The match in and of itself was fine, but that was not a good spot. Don't repeat it. Now, maybe they did. Maybe somebody did take them back there and it's like, no, that didn't come off good. This was not good on camera at all. Not only was it not good on camera, but the camera's right there in it. You can look right there. I mean, they got such a perfect shot of this that there is no denying she never even came close to her thighs where it would have actually meant something. Her thighs are exposed. Her knees and her shins are not. So that was just the wrong thing. In fact, I don't even know if I would have included that in the match. If anything, I would have said, can we edit around this? Can you throw in a crowd shot or something? Just get that off of my screen. I don't want it there. That's what somebody should have said before this hit the air. That was just a bad spot. Does that spot take away from the overall match? No, but it does make it look nonsensical. Like, I don't know what kind of paper-thin boots that Tiki Chamorro is supposed to have that her nails, Gianni's nails, are supposed to get through it and actually hurt. But, yeah, if that were a choice that I had to make, that spot would be out of this match. And so we get back into it. Chamorro goes and she has her hope spot. She cuts her down with a palm strike, a clothesline, a high cross body, and all of which looked perfectly fine. Really, I mean, all of that is absolutely fine. The only down spot of this match was that rake because it just was ridiculous. Chamorro sets Gianni up. I forget what area code they used for her version of it, but it was a 619. And then you got the second bad spot of the match. She hits the 619, drops Gianni. Gianni's laying on the mat, and Chamorro decides that she's going to do a splash. The splash that she attempts to do is right at the legs of GiGi Gianni. I have no idea what she was trying to accomplish with that. It didn't even make it to where it looked like she was trying to splash her across the stomach or the chest or someplace that would really hurt. She was standing by her knees and just jumped up and decided that she's going to splash on the legs, which didn't make a lot of sense because all Gianni did was just raise her knees. And so now Chamorro landed on the knees, and she missed most of those. She actually landed on her feet. So she didn't catch a lot of it. Now, the same point was, I guess happened. You could say it, all right, well, she caught her feet and she got the wind knocked out of her. I mean, that's possible. But those two spots there just took something out of this match. I mean, it's moments like that. It's like it was a fair match, but this shouldn't be on national TV. I'm sorry, it shouldn't. This match belonged on an indie show where they're testing things out and getting it right and fine-tuning what they can and can't do in the match. That's where this belongs. It's not that it's terrible. It's just that the mistakes in there that are so glaring, it should have been someplace else. So after Gianni catches Chamorro with the kick in the guts from Chamorro doing a splash to her feet, Gianni hoists Chamorro up in power slam position, walks around and gives her the old running power slam. Beats Chamorro clean in the middle. GiGi Gianni wins. I was surprised that she actually won, quite honestly. This was a surprise, clean win by the heel and by somebody who has a terrible win-loss record. Gianni picks it up and moves on. Not like I expect her to continue to win, but, time will tell. So, yeah, that was a match that I'm sorry. It was okay, but it probably should have just been on somebody's, high school gym or whatever. The next match, BK Rhythm and Robbie Rocket taking on the Mother Truckers. I will say BK Rhythm and Robbie Rocket look like they are probably a better unit than the other individuals that they have tagged with over the weeks. I mean, the BK Rhythm hip hop thing and whatever Robbie Rocket's trying to, whatever she's trying to pull. I mean, they try to make it out like, yeah, she's a big dancer. She goes around and break dances and all that nonsense. But whether that be the case or not, it at least their gimmicks mesh. That's what I'm getting at with that. The Mother Truckers, they come out and do their normal shtick, their honk and all that, what have you. I said it before, I'll say it again. If there's anything that gives me the impression that this is made for kids, is the idiocy of standing around yelling honk like that's a cool thing to do. BK Rhythm does her normal opening rap. She takes a shot at the Mother Truckers needing help from Sophia Lopez, like that meant anything to the crowd. That crowd seemed like they did not know what they were talking about, nor did they care. So this is not like Caster when he comes out in AEW and he does, he did his rap and he would talk about something topical, or he would say something about, a wrestler there that would get a rise out of the audience. This is not like John Cena 20 years ago when he was doing the same gimmick, when he was coming out and he was, rapping and he was giving lines that people understood that bought the ticket. Not like that. I can't even say it's like PG-13, which would probably be 30 years ago when they were doing it. And it's not like they came out and they rapped and they started, but they would cut promos on people and sometimes they, try to do some weak rhyme or whatever. But the point being is that the material that was used in those instances was material that the fans would actually get a rise out of, like, ooh, stuff like that. This is not one of those cases. Those fans, the majority of them, just sat there and they sat and smiled and they watched and they heard it, but nobody cared. No one cared that this line had some sort of diss in it, and I use this very lightly, about that they had to get bailed out of jail from Sophia Lopez, which that entire angle was stupid to begin with. You know, the fans did. I mean, just look at the audience. You don't have to take my word for it. Go on their YouTube and look at the segment that has this, and look past them and look at the audience. They don't care. They didn't care, and they didn't get it. The only thing that even made that remotely come off like that meant something is that they put the camera on a close-up of the mother truckers, and you got their reaction. So that might be the only thing that saved it. But even then, like I said, the reaction didn't do anything for the audience. The rap didn't do anything for the audience. It meant nothing. This is right back to that thing where I said they have no personality. And this shows it. They got nothing. The match is fine, but personality-wise, is nothing there. So they do that. It drew no heat from the audience. The heels jump the mother truckers, and then the match is underway. Even though they got jumped, Holly Swag turns it around and takes down Robbie Rocket. Robbie Rocket goes and she makes the tag to BK Rhythm. This was a probably more acceptable and competitive match for Holly Swag than the matches that she's had with other people. Why? Because Robbie Rocket and BK Rhythm are not drastically bigger than her. Normally when we see Swag, she's in there with people who are larger and perceived as stronger. This is not that case. Rhythm and Rocket are not bigger necessarily. I mean, they may be a little thicker at, depending on where you're looking, I guess, and we won't go into that. But no, this is not a case of Swag being outgunned by size, weight, or strength necessarily. But they still stick to the mother trucker template. Swag starts off, Swag gets bounced around. It's just that it was a little bit more competitive now, rather than her just taking just a full-on beating from start to finish. She got some hope spots in there. I mean, she stayed down a good majority of it. I don't want to make it sound like it was super competitive, but she did get some hope spots in. But by and large, this is the same match that the truckers always have. We can start off with whoever we start off with, but once Swag is in the ring, the heels take over and they pretty much bounce her around as much as humanly possible until Swag manages to get free and she makes the tag, and then the mom comes in and she cleans up. That is what Big Rig Betty's job is. She's the cleanup hitter. And this match was no different. So we got Holly Swag, and she's getting beat up on by both BK Rhythm and Robbie Rocket, not at the same time, but, incrementally. And they cut the ring off, and they keep her in, and they just, take advantage of her as much as they can. This all keeps going until, as predicted and as said, Holly Swag is able to do something to break herself free from this onslaught. That being when BK Rhythm gets into the ring, she shoots into the turnbuckle. Swag is able to leap over and get the sunset flip out of the corner. Rhythm is able to get free of that, but Swag rolls through, gives her a kick in the mouth, and then she's able to get the tag to Big Rig Betty, and of course Big Rig Betty does the Big Rig Betty stuff. Come in, clothesline, punch, forearm, backhand, super kick. These are the typical things that she does. Robbie Rocket takes a hit, falls back into her partner. BK Rhythm tags in. She gets hit with a ripcord clothesline. And then this sets up for a Big Rig to give her Big Rig Stunner, or whatever she wants to call it, because they ain't gave a proper name to it yet. But Swag comes in when Robbie Rocket tries to save her partner, which she did, but then Swag comes in, puts her out of the ring, beats her up on the outside. Big Rig does the honk, and then, God, I hate saying that. She does that, and then she scores with the stunner, gets the pin, 1, 2, 3. Match is done. And so, I mean, I can only go back and say that Rocket and Rhythm look good together, but, you know, didn't really do much in this particular case because they still lost. This goes, Dave McClain went into some honk honk routine. I hated that. I hate that. It's I'm going to repeat it again. If anything makes me very sure that this is for kids, is that nonsense there. Them sitting around just honk, 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 honk. God. Whew. Please don't keep doing that. So yeah, they get the win. They beat them, and then, you know, hey, the mother truckers score another one. And, you know, I don't know if they're going to get back towards the Sophia Lopez thing, but that's been weeks. Are they ever going to do anything with that? Is that story going to go somewhere, or is this going to be another one that's incomplete or dropped? I'm getting the feeling that this is just going to be dropped. A story that didn't make a lot of sense to begin with. I mean, I don't know why the two babyface team, the two members of this babyface team would call the singular lawyer that WoW has, which apparently she's such a great lawyer that she spends 90% of the time managing wrestlers. That makes sense. But that match, or I should say that match, that angle, where is it going? Where is this supposed to go? They have done this. It's been well over, probably going into 2 months now, and there's been almost no follow-up to that. Just random mentions about it that's on TV, but other than that, nothing. And then they walked right into a match against the champions at the time. So so why? What was that even for? Where was this going? Why was that even a thing? Anyhow, I'm not going to make my brain explode trying to explain the unexplainable. So the next thing we have here, assumably, because again, remember I watched this on YouTube, is Princess Aussie. She does a promo on her deserving the championship. And I suppose that she would, considering that months ago she won a qualifying match to go after the championship to begin with. But then she never appeared for that qualifying match, but the person that was beaten showed up in it and won. Why? Because, wow, that's why. Didn't need a reason. We just make it up as we went along. Oh, it's a wild card rule, and she managed to get back in it. So anyway, it didn't make sense then, doesn't make sense now, and they are revisiting I guess the story of Princess Aussie going after her championship. This feels very haphazard and very loosely built. There's almost zero emotional connection to seeing Princess Aussie win this championship. Like, I feel nothing for her chasing this. And if you want an example of when you had the feeling that, like, I want to see this person do this, I have to watch this pay-per-view or this event in order for me to see whether they succeeded or not. Don't think about the outcome, but think about the build. Okay? I'm going to say that first. Don't think about the outcome. Think about the build. Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes and that magnificent promo that he cut about his story. That got people invested. And they wanted to see him win it. They wanted to see Cody Rhodes win that championship. Hey, you can go back further than that. You can look at Sami Zayn. They were waiting to see Sami do something in the bloodline. When he was part of the bloodline, then they finally booted him out because the world was waiting on it. They knew it was going to happen. They didn't want it, but they knew it was going to happen. It built and it built and it built and it built. And then when it happened, they were so ready to see Sami Zayn get some level of revenge against Roman Reigns. Again, let's not think about the outcome because we know the outcome were for those two examples. Let's not think about the outcome. Let's think about the build. The build to both of those got people to want to see that. You can go more recent than that, and you can look at MJF and Adam Cole. They built something out of practically nothing. Because it's not like they had a lot going into it other than, you were somebody I looked up to and now you're nothing. And then that kind of blossomed into a fainting of a friendship that became a friendship. Now they're in this storyline of, it's almost a will they want they. They got a bromance going on, but who's faking out who here? And it's captivated the AEW audience. Those are the type of things that I'm talking about when I say this has no build. It's just Princess Aussie. She cuts a 2-minute promo or less saying that this is what I want and I want the championship and I deserve it. You were my glass ceiling and Penelope Pink, you'll be my reward. And that came off just like somebody wrote it down or whatever. Like, read this. Same thing that she said in the vignette or the video package is the same thing that she repeated when she was live in front of the audience. So, again, it comes off to me like this was a very scripted situation. And nothing to make you feel for this whatsoever. So we are at the main event. Now, bear in mind, I'm not talking about how good or bad the match is. We're not going into what they did match-wise. We're just talking about, did you believe it? Were you invested? Did you care? Like, I know there's going to be some people that watch WoW that are going to just care just because it's WoW. That's one thing I've noticed with the WoW fans. The people that are hardcore WoW fans, they don't care what WoW does. As long as they got some wrestling women on the screen, that is all they care about. And everybody that WoW tells them is a phenomenal athlete or a fantastic wrestler, they just go with it. They don't debate it. They don't question it. It's just, this is what it is. And I learned that lesson when somebody was like, oh, man, there was a wrestler some years ago named Frost that wrestled for WoW, and she wrestled all of like 3 matches professionally. And that's not an exaggeration. She wrestled maybe like 3 matches. And somebody was convinced that she was the next coming of Awesome Kong or something. Probably because she was a black woman and she was mean. that was about it. That's where the similarities started and that's where they stopped. But he was like, oh man, they should get Kong in there so Frost and Kong could go at it. It's like, why? Are you out of your mind? Like, she's not ready to be in the ring with no Awesome Kong, and Awesome Kong is not going to WoW. But I say that to say that that's what their fan base is. You don't have to convince them. You do not have to convince the WoW contingent of fans that WoW is worth watching or not. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they come out in full force over it, but you do not have to convince them. As long as the WoW is on, they're going to watch. So this was the main event. Vickie Lynn McCoy taking on Princess Aussie. This is maybe the first and only time that I've seen Princess Aussie actually act as the obstacle for any championship that they had, regardless to how many times they've talked about, oh, Princess Aussie, I mean, not Princess Aussie, that Vickie Lynn McCoy is the glue that holds it. I mean, they have gone out of their way to repeat that ad nauseum to try to give Vickie Lynn McCoy some level of importance in the Fabulous Four faction. I really think they have done Vickie Lynn McCoy a disservice doing that if they weren't going to give her a position to follow it up. And they have never given her a position to follow it up until this one match. So I don't know how, like, you're gauging it off of that, how successful is she as the, quote, glue or the obstacle that you have to go through in order to get a championship match? When this is the only time that has happened, and spoiler alert, she lost. So, like, how is this the example of how much the glue that she's supposed to be and how well she saves the championships for the members of the Fabulous Four? I don't know why the Fatal Four popped in my mind. I'm thinking about a comic book apparently. But yeah, I was like, I don't know where that comes from, that anybody would think that, or that they would even try to sell that to people. That, hey, you know, she did all of this stuff and she's the reason that blah, blah, blah. And they're talking, you know, and that's the other thing. They're talking about all these obstacles that Princess Aussie overcame to get to the match that she's in. I wrote on my notes, like what? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And that's another open question. What obstacles did Princess Aussie legitimately, I mean, in the kayfabe universe of WoW, what obstacles did Princess Aussie have to overcome in order to get to a championship match? Where's the obstacle? This is the only one that I'm aware of. I mean, yeah, she had a tag match with Candy Crush that kind of set this up, that she would go after the championship. But that was that one thing. And they won that. I was like, I don't know where was the obstacle there. They won. Here's the first time that she had something placed in front of her that was a legitimate obstacle. Like, in order for you to get this championship match, you got to beat me. That's the only time I've seen this happen with her. So what obstacles are they talking about? This is where WoW's commentating team loses credibility because they just say anything to try to get the story that they want to get across, whether the physicality, the matches, the video, or anything else that WoW has produced backs it up or not. This is the narrative of Aussie's path, and this is a very short-term path. It was no long-term storytelling here. There was no real build to it. It just kind of happened. I mean, you could say that there are some weeks in it because the way that WoW produces their programming, they did a tag match and then they don't get back to that particular story till like 2 or 3 weeks later. So, I mean, I guess you can say it's stretched out in that regard, but when you're just talking about matches and obstacles, there's not a lot to it. So anyway, I've already given the spoiler, so let's talk about how she got there. Aussie was looking to go for a splash off the top rope, which is her finish. It's like the old Eddie Guerrero frog splash. Well, first, we'll talk about how she set that up. The setup was Vickie Lynn McCoy is in control. She tries to do, assumably, a German suplex. But in lifting her up, Aussie reaches back and turns it into like a cutter. They call it an Aussie cutter. I mean, it was I guess that's close enough. It wasn't like a full-fledged cutter, but it was like a modified one, so we'll go with that. So as she's going to get up, the referee, for whatever reason, is yelling at Vickie Lynn McCoy while she's on the ground. I don't know why that would be a thing. Like, get up. You're supposed to be doing the match. So I don't know what the referee was yelling at her about. This is one of those moments that I guess the referee was trying to find something to do so that he didn't see Lana Starr interfere. So his back is turned. Lana Star gets up on the apron and starts grabbing at Princess Aussie to prevent her from coming out the top. Of course, the referee's yelling again for no particular reason at Vickie Lynn McCoy. She gets up. Referee turns around. He does see Lana on the tail end of that, but apparently there's no disqualification here. So he doesn't disqualify her. Vickie Lynn gets up to her feet, not catches her, but she hoists Princess Aussie off the top rope into fireman's carry position. Before she can do anything, though, Aussie is able to convert that into a pin, like crucifix pin. And she gets the 1, 2, 3, and she is now punched her ticket to go and challenge for the championship. So, Princess Aussie wins with a pin from nowhere on Vickie Lynn McCoy. Fantastic. And then she cuts the promo that I talked about earlier. She repeats the same thing, talking about a glass ceiling. It is a very short promo, and it is the same thing, almost word for word, at the end that she talked about in her video version of the promo. Vickie Lynn McCoy, you were my glass ceiling, and Penelope Pink, you're my reward. Nice promo. Probably could have been changed up a bit while she was in front of the audience. I don't know if they're under instructions like, this is your promo, you say this backstage and you say it up front. I don't know if that's the narrative that they're trying to get across. I don't know if that's what they're instructed to do, but that's what happened. It was just a repeat of the same promo that took place. So that was the episode of WoW. Episode 48, average. It's a C. There's nothing special that happened here. They pushed forward the narrative of Princess Aussie going after the championship. I imagine we'll see that in the weeks to come eventually. But that's what it is. They push forward that narrative, and she gets the championship match. You know, finally, she gets the opportunity. Through all these obstacles, the one that she had, she gets the championship match. So there we have it. That was wild, and this is a setup for another match. Now, before I close it, I think it should be said this would probably work a little better. In my opinion, I will add that, in my opinion, if Princess Aussie did not have to, well, I shouldn't say, let's just say us. If we as the viewer did not have to wait for weeks, and I'm sure that's the way it's going to be, did not have to wait for weeks to actually get to the match. Or if they were going to do weeks, insert something from Princess Aussie and the champion leading into that. Just set aside 5 to 6 minutes in the show and let them do something. Whether that be interview segments, whether that be a crossing backstage, something just to keep it in the forefront of people's minds to where when it finally happens, we can be ready for it. But I doubt that will ever take place. So that's it. That was the episode. That was the review. It's an average episode at best. And you can thank Vickie Lynn McCoy and Princess Aussie for that, for bringing it up. And Chella and Chainsaw, you can thank them for bringing the match up, or bringing the show up. The other ones weren't bad, but they weren't spectacular either. It's like they just do what WoW needs them to do. We got these 6 minutes to fill, so we're gonna do that. That's what this oftentimes feels like. It does. If the Mother Truckers match was a little different, maybe I would feel differently about the match. But their matches are almost always the same. It doesn't vary very much from one tag team match to the next. It is this is our template. This is what we do, and this is what we stick to. Start off with Big Rig Betty, tag in Holly Swag. She gets a good run. Then she gets beat up. Then we tag out to Big Rig Betty. She does whatever, and then she wins. You might switch it every once in a while, but that's ultimately what it comes down to. And if we didn't have the ridiculousness that took place in the Chamorro and Gianni match, it would probably be a better match too. But that's what it comes down to. You got two reasonable matches and two matches that kind of were meh at best. So there he is. I will now look forward to and wait on episode 49, which, you know, according to them, they've got what I would consider a questionable main event. Reina Del Rey and Wrecking Ball taking on the Holiday and Siren the Voodoo Doll for, you know, who knows what. So that is what we'll look forward to on the next go round. Interesting show, not great, but it was interesting. I mean, tell me what you think. Was the show better than what I'm giving it credit for? Was it average? Was it below average? How did you feel about this? Did it deliver what you want out of a WoW episode, out of a wrestling show? Forget just being a WoW episode. Did it deliver what you wanted out of a wrestling show? Leave your comments below, and we'll discuss that at our earliest convenience. And with that, I will say now, folks, that this is Mr. Green saying so long, and we will see you on the next go round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.